Today's the day I've been talking about for too long. It's time to run all these engines. Gonna put them on a run stand one by one, fire them up, run them, shut them down, switch to the next one. Now, if you're interested in that kind of stuff, hang in there. We should be able to make a lot of noise today, hopefully all good noises. And should be kind of fun to see different stuff run, right? Hang in there.
I'd say it's a nut job.
All right. So the first thing, we're going to run the Pontiac motor first. You can see it's already got the plate on it to be picked up and set on the run stand. I was going to do it first because the others are all FEs, and I wanted to kind of get the oddball for me out of the way first because, of course, everything's different on run stand. Fortunately, the flex plate bolts that they sent me are the wrong length, and I can't put the flywheel on, the flex plate on, or rather. So that means that I had to reorder the bolts. That means those bolts won't be in for at least another day. So instead of holding up progress here, we're just going to start with this one. We're going to run this one first. Unfortunately, I burn a half a day dealing with that. So we're going to get this one on the run stand, and we're going to start with it. I can't wait to hear this thing run. This is going to be insane. Let's get started. First thing on today's agenda is I'm going to modify my run stand just a hair. If you've been around a while, you've seen this run stand. It's kind of a universal. And I got to move the scales out of the way. And it's made to where you kind of bolt the back of the block with that. The flywheel just kind of hangs out there. And you know the drill. Well, what I had done in the past when I run mine, because Ford, the starter bolts to the bell housing, whereas GM products, it bolts to the block, so that's no problem. I made this little bracket. So this little bracket that I made bolts to the back of the block, and then it has 3 holes for the starter, and they're tapped, so you run the starter through there and bolt it down. So this takes the place of the bell housing, and then you can crank the engine. I'm going to modify things a little bit. That's fine. This works. It's no big deal. But the more I stare at that flywheel hurling at my life, the more I think, why not change this just a little bit? So I have a bell housing. I have an FE bell housing here. And my plan is to mount the bell housing to this. I haven't done this before, so I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to have to do. But I think I can make it work fairly easily. I think. So let's dig into this and see what we can do. All right, I'm going to start by removing these 2 bars here. Let me slide this up just a little bit. One thing about this thing's infinitely adjustable out and back, so that does make it a little easier sometimes. Sometimes I think it's aggravation just because you're kind of hunting center all the time to get everything centered. So let me get these off. And I think we can bolt these directly to the back of the bell housing. All right, this is the plan. These are the straps you normally bolt to the back of the block. The problem is none of these, the top 2 bolt holes are bigger. I've never understood why. They have been. But anyway, none of these holes line up exactly right, top and bottom. They're off. So I'm going to slot one of these holes here just a little bit and use the big one here, which lines up dead perfect for this bigger bolt, probably for a different size bell housing bolts or block bolts. That mounts up perfect. So then I'm probably going to take this one up here, and man, it's so close. It's just about a quarter of the hole off. So I'm just going to slot this up just a little bit right here where I can put that in there, and then I can bolt this back to this frame here, and I'll have a bell housing on there that I can actually bolt the Ford starter to the bell housing. Everything will be encased, and at least it'll give me the illusion that I'm doing something safe. Okay, so here's what we had in mind. I just slotted these two holes up here just a little bit, just to give me a little bit for these bigger bolts. These are made for a smaller bolt. Again, like what a GM would use. So the Ford uses a bigger bolt. So I just slotted these just a little bit, these two at the top. And now this bracket that normally bolts to the back of the block bolts to my bell housing. And I can take a bell housing off and still bolt it to the back of a GM block. Nothing's been modified to the point it can't be, undone. So, very simple. And it just gives me these 4 holes now are for Ford, and I can move up or down or left or right or whatever and grab these smaller holes for something different. So this should make it more universal in the future. Even though, to be quite honest, I don't see myself doing any more GM motors in the future, honestly. It's just, I'm not really set up for it, so I have to buy, order, or hunt for every part, where with the Ford stuff, if there happens to be something that I didn't have on, with the engine or whatever, then I'll probably have it laying around here. So it's just easier for me. So now let's get this mounted to the actual stand. All right. Now, which 2 holes? It looks like, these 2 are the ones that's going to line up. All right, there we go. Now, keep in mind, I keep everything on my stand loose until I get the engine bolted on it, so these legs are loose. So, now the bell housing is bolted to this, and it's sturdy. So now, let's slide these out. So now what I'll do is get the engine bolted to the bell housing, stood up where I want it, adjust these legs up to where the motor mounts are till I get the motor, leveled where I want it. And then we should be able to start wiring stuff up. I keep way too much junk on my run stand. All this needs to be cleaned off right now. But we should be able to wire stuff up then. All right, so here we are, rolled back at the door. It's on the run stand. Let me show you what I did. So it's sitting on a run stand now. Rolled back toward the door. I'll roll it outside when I get ready to start it. Got the, for those that was asking about the run stand, I got the, it's a manual bell housing, but it doesn't really matter if it's a flex plate, flywheel, or whatever, because you don't have anything behind it, so it doesn't matter. That's bolted on there. I still got to put the starter on. Still got to put headers on it. Still got to run all the electrics and the gauges and all that stuff. Still got to run the fuel line. All that stuff still got to be done. But it is sitting on the run stand right now, ready to fire up. Well, once I, do everything to it, so it's not actually ready. You know what I'm saying? But the ones that have asked specifically about this run stand, let me run down a few things. No, there's no radiator on the front of it. It has adapters. You see one I'm laying right there. It has adapters. One goes on the outlet side of the water pump, one goes on the inlet side, and you hook a hose to it. You hook your garden hose to the inlet side, and for the outlet side, you just hook another garden hose to it and let it run out, and it circulates cold water through the engine the entire time. Or, tap water, whatever, through the engine the entire time. So there's no place for a radiator. So if you wanted to add a radiator to it, you could. You just have to scoot everything back. All these do move up and down, so you can move them forward, backwards, whatever you want to do. So you would have to scoot this engine all the way back and then build a pair of legs to put a radiator up here if you were so inclined. One of the things that I started doing is I changed some of the gauges. Like this little tack right here is garbage. It worked for a little while, but it quit. I have a new tack going in it right now in just a second. The temperature hand works fine. And this is a gauge from O'Reilly's, like you would put in a little 3-pack set for the oil pressure. So it's a mechanical gauge. This thing comes with electric gauges on it, so they have a sensor on the motor and just wire to this. I don't really like that. I like to use the hard lines and have a mechanical gauge for my oil pressure and stuff. So that's what this has on it. I'm about to put a new tack on it. Has a fuel tank on the back of it here. It's a 1-gallon fuel tank. Now, there is no petcock to shut it off, so you might want to add a petcock to shut it off. I tend to run an electric fuel pump on all the engines just to make it easier, even though this one has the mechanical pump on it. Also, engine mounts. I have modified a set of Chevy engine mounts to put on this just because they have the clamshell design, and I just run a through rod through there and put a nut and washer on both sides, clamp it down, and it works fine. It has an ignition switch. I don't care for that. A push button's fine for me. But for the money, this is a really good stand. It has a tray back here that's made for your battery and stuff. Mine turns into a catch-all. It's where I leave my starter laying, where I leave my hoses laying, spare bolts. I leave all that stuff laying there so that I have them, but it's made for a battery, of course. But all in all, it's a good stand. It rolls. The only thing that I really care to change on this thing is two things. One, I'm going to add a strap between these two right here. It doesn't need it, but it makes me feel more comfortable because all this stuff will move if you try. Doesn't move when the motor's running, but just peace of mind because all this stuff does slide around. The legs slide in and out. They slide forward and backwards. That's great for adjustability. I don't move this back one. I leave it where it is. So I'm going to put a piece of strap in here and put bolts in it and just strap this back one where it is because I'm never going to move this back one. I'll move that front one. The second thing is I want different wheels on this. I want to get it up off the ground more. Behind getting it up off the ground more is it is the exact same height off the ground as my engine hoist. So the legs just kind of bump into each other. So I have to end up jacking this up a little bit to slide the engine hoist under it and then jack it up and move it back off of it. If I had wheels that were about an inch taller, I could roll my engine hoist under it and back out and it wouldn't be an issue. So there's the rundown on the run stand. You're about to get to see it in action. I just got to plumb everything, wire everything, and we'll be ready to go. Okay, it's early the next morning. I'm out here doing a little wiring now. I had to put a new solenoid switch on my run stand. If you're doing GM products, you don't need the solenoid switch. It's built into your starter. Ford's, it's the opposite. So I am trying to wire my stand up to where it can run any engine, even though I know it's going to be Ford heavy. I mean, I probably won't do any more GM motors. Well, I'll take that back. I have one more GM motor that I want to run eventually. I just don't know when I'm going to run it. So, yeah, I'm trying to wire it up so it'll run any particular engine. So I added a new solenoid switch to it. I did put a new tack on this thing. Upgraded my tack on it. Just made me a little piece of L-shaped bracket right there and mounted it right on top. So I've got a much better tack than that little tiny thing right there that, you know, Superman has to have his eyes to see. Got my oil pressure gauge on it, temperature gauge. And these stands run just like a car. They run off of a ignition switch instead of a push button and a toggle switch. I think a toggle switch and a push button's fine, but that's what's on here. So that'll allow us to wire up for either style engine, and I'll get it in a minute. I'm trying to clean some of the wiring up, move some of the stuff around. For the most part, we're almost ready to fire this engine. One thing that has went missing from my engine stand, I thought I throwed everything in this little box back here in the back, but I probably borrowed it from another for another project. My ground cable seems to have vanished on me, so I'm going to have to run to town and get another ground cable. And I think after I get another ground cable, I do believe another ground cable and wire up the actual ignition wire, the wire that goes to the coil, and wire up the tack. I may even wire up the tack and ignition wire before I go. But a couple of wiring things and a ground cable. Oh, I got to put the headers on it. Put the headers on it, and I think it's ready to start the process of cranking it up. We all know, if you've ever fooled the engines, very, very rarely do you ever just turn the key and it goes boom, 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 and purrs away. Usually you got to monkey with the timing just a hair, monkey with the fuel just a hair to get it to actually crank. And in this one, we may have to adjust on the valves just a hair. So it's going to be a process of waking this thing up. At least I suspect it's going to be a process of waking this thing up. You never know. It may actually crank right up. I don't know. So we're gonna find out together. Well, I don't know if you can hear it or not, but it's raining like piss pouring out of the boot out there. Weatherman said it wasn't supposed to rain today, so been kind of waiting on that to break so I can run this engine. Until then, I'm just gonna try to clean the wiring up a little bit that I've done. I know old Chip Foose probably don't do it this way, but I'll take a little electrical tape. I'll take a little electrical tape and the wires that go this way, I'll put a little piece around them so they're all bunched together. Ones go that way, a little piece so they're all bunched together. That way it's kind of neatish. This weather's wild, man, around here. I was in a t-shirt yesterday. It was upper 60s. Today it's 40 and raining. Wild, man, wild, I tell you, wild. So what I've got here is all my gauges are backlit. As soon as you put a battery on them, all of them are backlit. It has nothing to do with the switch at all. I wired them that way for two reasons, and I'll go over in a minute. My ignition wire, my tack wire goes across the top of the motor along with my, yes, I know this is a plastic oil line, but it's a run stand. I mean, I don't think it really matters on a run stand. So I got my oil line and my two wires go across the motor over there. My tack wire and my ignition wire. Got a solenoid switch right here mounted in the front. Cable goes down to the battery. I still got to put them headers on. Why do I keep forgetting that? And then I've got everything kind of tucked away under the dash here. Everything is working. I checked power on everything. I am not going to rotate it over at the moment to show you because I have not hooked that ignition wire up and I don't want a hot wire just flopping around on the front of the motor up there sparking. So here it is on the stand. Stand's all wired up, and for those people that were interested in this particular stand, there's the modifications that I've done to it. I've put a bell housing on it. GM motors, you don't have to do that. You don't really have to do it for Ford motors. You just have to make something to mount the starter with. As far as things I've changed, these were all, as I said earlier, electric gauges. They had sensors on the motors, all of them. And I chose the water temperature is fine because of the way I run it, it's not going to run hot. But I chose to put a mechanical gauge for the oil pressure. And then this tack right here worked about twice and it doesn't really tack anymore. So I've got this auto gauge tack here that a buddy of mine hooked me up with. He bought it brand new and it was still in the box. He went with a white face gauge instead. So I got this tack from him and I just took an L-shaped piece of bracket there, put a self-tapper in the top of this. So that's mounted up here front and center for me. Gas tank right here. This is, if I can get the cap off here, that is a vented cap. That is a metal tank. One thing, speaking of the tank, I would suggest doing is pouring some fuel or something through this tank before you ever run any of it. The first time I poured fuel in it, I've had this thing over a year now, so it's had lots of fuel in it now. But the first time I poured fuel in it, there was something kind of like something sand-like. I don't know what it was. It was almost like a sand was in it, and it washed out. And my filter caught it, but I don't really know what that was. But there was just something in it. Maybe it was something from being packed or whatever. There's two different size bolts that go into this intake, 3/8 and 5/16. There's 4 5/16 bolts and 8 3/8 bolts. The only 5/16 ones I had was gold, and all the rest of them are stainless. So I ran out today and got some stainless 5/16. Nobody else would probably care, but that'd drive me nuts. There was 4 different color bolts on the entire engine. So now that that's done, I got to put these headers on. And we're just waiting on the rain to break so we can run the engine. Now, when I go to run these on a run stand, when I run FEs, I run these headers here. I call them my Dale headers. I run my Dale headers on them. These headers, they're pitiful, man. They're pitiful. Look at these things. Where are they at? I don't know if you can see it here. Look, the globs, looks like it was put together with a stick welder. And hell, they may have been. They work. They are beat and bashed in. But they're perfect for a run stand. They don't have any way to hook anything to them. They're run stand only headers. And the story behind those are a buddy of ours. A lot of us that raced early on with Southeast Gassers and Superstock. I started before Dale did, but Dale had a car. He called Lucille, and he built these fender well headers out of some scrap pipe and put on that car. They're god awful, but they serve the function of a header. You know, they're just god awful. And he eventually moved on and built a set of big headers and all those. He sold those headers to another buddy of ours, and then I got the headers off of them. And then when Dale passed away, there's no way I was ever going to get rid of those headers. So they hang up here in the rafters, and when I get ready to run a FE on the run stand, I put my Dale headers on. All right, there she is, ready to roll outside and run once it quits raining. I know some of y'all gonna pick on me about my headers. My old Dales. But yep, she's there. She's ready to fire up. Everything is wired. The battery is on it. I got to hook the fuel line up. I didn't do that. I hadn't put any fuel in the tank yet. I'm waiting until I can roll it outside. Okay then. I prefer to be able to see what's going on. Well, I didn't expect that. Okay then. I didn't expect it to crank because I was looking over here at the gauge, and the fuel pressure gauge still says 0, like there's no fuel up here. Obviously there is. And my gauge isn't working back there on the instrument cluster, so I just want to go ahead and shut things down and look things over real good before we start it up and let it run, because I got a couple of gauges that aren't reading anything. One, this fuel gauge. I'm not going to worry too much about this fuel pressure gauge because I'm not trying to really do anything right now, so I'm not really going to worry too much about the fuel pressure gauge. And I absolutely love this stand. Don't get me wrong. For the money, you can't beat it. I mean, it was by far the cheapest stand on earth. With that comes the absolute bottom of the barrel gauges. Just when you buy it, just understand you're going to throw the gauges away, and you're going to start over. Since I've owned it, this is the second gauge that's failed on it. You're just going to have to change the gauges on it. Just don't even bother. Just change them. So before you got the lovely footage of my feet, what I was actually trying to film there was the tack, and I still do filming with my phone, and apparently I had the phone pointed at the ground. I can't even put into words how quick this engine revs. It's insane. You can just blip the throttle and this thing zips to $6,000. It's insane how quick this thing revs. Just wah, wah. I know it doesn't sound great on camera. You know, part of it probably has to do with the fact that Ray Charles stick welded these headers together with his feet, and there's exhaust leaks, I know, but man, how quick this thing revs is insane. It's just, wow, wow. I don't even, whoo, let me tell you now, whoo. That's a happy sounding motor right there. Got to tweak the timing just a little bit. And this back choke bowl is hanging open. Got a little fuel leak. Few little minor things, but that's why we run them, right? The engine definitely sounds better than my starter does. I don't know what else to say. It fires up. I mean, it fires right up. It doesn't hesitate. Fires right up. Again, at idle has 43 to 45 pounds of oil pressure at idle. Man, it's happy. No shaking, no vibrations. It's a happy little motor and sounds obscene. It's just obscene how good this thing sounds. It's probably illegal to sound this good in some places, but it needs a little tweaking. The timing needs tweaked just a little bit. The fuel needs tweaked just a little bit. It needs a few of these tweaks, and my, dying dolphin starter down there decided to completely give up the ghost, because the next step was I was going to drive it on the run stand. To give that starter its fair due, though, I've had the stand for a year. It's been with the stand then. That's the starter that I had on Wayland when I put the first motor in it. And I had that starter on, I think, the Galaxy before I bought one of those little mini high torque starters and and built the race motor. So that starter has been floating around here since about 2018. You know what I'm saying? Compared to a lot of stuff you get now, hell, it's done pretty good. So just bad timing when it decided to give up the ghost. But I may get in there and bang on her with a hammer. It's wanting to stay engaged is what it's wanting to do.
Early the next morning, and it is absolutely frigid out here. But we're going to see if we can get this starter off and see if they'll warranty it out for us. I don't know what the weather's like where you are, but we have literally experienced all 4 seasons in this 1 week, and it's only Thursday. Ooh, Lord have mercy. Not as young as I once was.
So I have a real problem with keeping up with receipts. I don't. They usually get thrown in the floor of the truck and then get thrown out at the car wash or something. And so, thankfully, I deal with the same parts store most of the time here in town, the local O'Reilly's. So I'm hoping that it won't be too big of a deal to warranty this thing out. I really won't know till I know. So we'll find out. I think since I use my shop name or my shop account, that it's all on file there. But again, I don't know. We'll see. The goal would be able to get this thing to where we can start it up again, just so I can see if I've got the few little leaks I've got taken care of. At the end of the day, I don't know that it matters, because it's not like leaks can't be taken care of when it goes in the car. It's just I really like things to be taken care of before I send them home. Come on, bolt. There we go. Oh yeah, plenty of room. Plenty of room. Here. I don't know what's going on. It don't look like there's anything wrong. But it obviously don't work, and you heard it. It sounds terrible. Hopefully, since this starter's not that old, still read the part number real good. All my information will be on file. I think that tooth right there, oops, point the phone in the right place. I think that tooth right there is chipped off. These seem fine. I think that one's got a chip in it. So maybe it was, I don't know. It don't matter what was wrong with it. At the end of the day, something was wrong with it. So I'm going to see if I can get this starter replaced. If I can get this starter replaced, we will try to fire this up one more time. Just to see if we've got the fuel leaks and stuff fixed. Give her a couple of rooms. It'd be nice to see how it cold starts. It's freaking cold, so let's see how it cold starts. And yeah, we'll find out. I'm gonna take the starter and get it back up there, and if everything goes right, then we can fire this one back up, make sure it cold starts good, make sure everything's good there, and then we'll get this other FE on the run stand real quick. Good news and some not quite as good news. Good news is they are going to warranty my starter out, so I'll have a starter for the FE. Bad news, they don't actually have one in stock, so I won't have one today. The bolts for the Pontiac motor for me to run it won't be here till the FedEx man arrives, which is probably going to be about 5 o'clock this evening. So that pretty much puts a wrap on running any engines right now, till tomorrow at least. This video is getting a little long, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to call this video here. On the next video that comes out, I mean, I'm going to keep filming, but I'm going to end this video here. The next video that comes out, the first thing you do is hear that one fire back up, most likely. Then we're going to load that one up and run it, and then we're going to load that one up and run it, assuming we don't run into more issues like we did with the starter. So that's that. Now, let's take a look at this engine real quick. One of the reasons I wanted to run it some more was I had a fuel leak from this fitting right here. I tightened it up and I believe it stopped, but unless I run it, I don't know. Now, is that a big deal? No. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm not even sure. This motor's going somewhere else to somebody else, and I'm not even sure they'll want to keep this metal line and all that I put on here. So all that may go away and they may run an AN line, and none of that even actually matters. Another thing I'd like to do is, I had the timing fairly close, but as you've seen in the video, I kind of tweaked it by ear to get it close. I didn't actually get a chance to put a timing light on it. I'd like to put a timing light on it and tweak that timing in just right. One other thing that I probably wouldn't fool with is the idle speed on this thing is a little faster than I personally like. Personally, I like for a motor to idle right around 1,000 RPMs. That's what I like. That's one of those things that's almost like, what color do you like your car? Everybody's going to have a different opinion. It's idling at about 1,300 right now. Some people, they may love that. That may be perfect to them. I like to hear that cam, blah, blah, blah. I like that chop. And if you've heard the video of the Galaxy running, I mean, man, that thing sounds like Paul Bunyan out there cutting cords. Just toom, 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 toom. And I like that. Some people don't really like that. I've got a buddy of mine that I raced with for a long time. Shit, he idles his is like 1,500. He's like, bah! He likes that. I mean, but he's racing it, so he likes that, so he can just bump the clutch and it, you know, Everybody likes a different idle speed. I like a real low idle speed. 900 to 1,000 RPMs is what I like. So this one being it was either 12 or 1,300. Honestly, I probably won't mess with the idle speed. I'll just let them put the idle where they want it to be. At the end of the day, I think it mentioned something about these carburetors, or at least one of these carburetors, is an automatic choke. I think he mentioned swapping it out to a manual choke anyway. So there's going to be some fiddling with carburetors anyway once it goes home. So really no reason for me to fool with idle speed. Other than that, I mean, I'd feel comfortable with it going home now. If it left today, I wouldn't feel disappointed in it, other than the fact that I really like this engine and I'd like to run it some more, just selfishly, just to get to run it some more. You know what I mean? But it looks good. It runs good. It does everything an engine is supposed to do. I just got a couple little tiny leaks to work out. Also, I know you didn't see it on camera. There was some time I ran it in between the first fire and that second time where Dumbo here didn't turn the camera on. We had some water running through it, and this hose right here leaks just a little bit. So I'm going to replace this hose real quick. The fuel leak, like I said, I tightened this, so I think the fuel leak's fine. I think everything's fine. I don't see any issues with this motor. It absolutely sounds like a ripper. I will say this little fuel pressure gauge right here that they supplied with this fuel line, this fuel pressure gauge doesn't actually work. It doesn't do anything. I feel their pain on that because I recently, if you remember the one where we fired up the Galaxy, went through 2 fuel pressure gauges to get a good one. Such a mess right now in the world. But it's a happy little engine. It is a happy little engine. I can't express enough how much you can blip the throttle. I mean, you can see where the throttle is. I didn't move it back this far. It was just a whoop, whoop, whoop. And it was going from the idle speed of 1,300 RPMs to 5 grand. Just wow, wow, wow. Just as soon as you could blip the throttle, it was hitting 5 grand. It is a happy engine. It revs silly quick. It revs like a Windsor. I don't know that I've seen an FE that revs quite like this thing. It is insanely rowdy. So what I'd like to do is in the next video, the first thing you hear in the next video is this thing going pucka, pucka, pucka again. Wabow, wabow, not pucka, pucka, wabow. That's what I'd like for you to hear the very first thing in the next video. Then we're going to pull it off. We're going to put this one on and fire it up. There's no reason that one shouldn't fire right up and run just as well. And then we're going to go to the Pontiac motor. The only thing that's going to be different in the process is this one is not a roller motor. This has a hydraulic flat tappet cam. These two are roller motors. Roller motors, I don't worry too much about cam break-in because it's a roller motor. With that being said, that one has a flat tappet cam in it, which means that one we will have to do the crank it up, get it up to 2,000 RPMs, run it for like 20 minutes, varying the RPM. So that one right there will have to sit and run for a little while before we actually ever hear the idle sound of it. This one and the Pontiac, not as critical. This one, both of those, we can fire them up. We can play with them a little bit and have a little fun. So this video turned more into information about the run stand than what I intended it for, but I'd been getting a lot of questions about a run stand you could run an FE on, and well, you can run one on that one. You just seen it. So guys, I hate we're going to have to cut it here, but the video's getting long and we just run into some unforeseen obstacles. So with all of that being said, tune in next time. Same bat channel, same bat time. And you're going to get to hear this one fire back up. You're going to get to hear that one run. You're going to get to hear that one run on the next video, because next video we're not going to talk about the stand and all that. We're just going to go engine after engine after engine and run these engines and have a run session. When will that video be? Today is Thursday. I will continue filming right now, but I'm going to try to space these videos out a little bit instead of making them come out right on top of each other. So I probably won't release the next video till Tuesday-ish will be when the video releases. I'm going to try to get to more consistent upload days like Tuesdays and Fridays or something along those lines. I'll let you know more on that later. But the second part of the video, I'm going to hang on to it for a few days to give time for this video to get out there and get seen. So we'll see you in the next one, and where it's just going to be more engines running and running and running. I cannot wait to see that one in the car and see what the car runs like. Man! Oddly enough, that's going in a street car. It's going to get a modern overdrive transmission behind it. It's going to be able to cruise down the highway looking like a rowdy beast that it is. Hey, hang in there. Thank you so much for y'all that subscribe and watch. If you're into these engines running and you like this kind of stuff, please remember to hit that subscribe. A little bell notification will tell you when I'm uploading. I can't thank you guys enough. Please remember to subscribe, share, like, and comment. Those really do help a lot when it comes to driving these videos. God bless you guys. To him be all the glory. And guys, we will see you on the next one.
I'd say it's a nut job.